The United States Navy recently acknowledged the existence of the AIM-174 missile, a weapon long thought to be in development, but never officially disclosed. This missile is an air-launched version of the hugely versatile, surface-launched SM-6, used for long-range air and terminal ballistic missile defense, as well as anti-ship and land attack roles. The AIM-174 potentially brings a whole host of options to the table in terms of how it can impact a battle, but perhaps most importantly, it gives the Navy a new arrow in its quiver that it can use to pop China's growing anti-access, area denial bubble that propagates far from its shores. Join us as we examine the Navy's newest and potentially most flexible missile ever fielded, and the ways it could make a major impact in a hypothetical fight with America's Pacific rival. Speculation regarding the existence of an air-launched SM-6 began to be backed by tangible evidence when a Super Hornet was photographed flying with a test-oriented SM-6 missile under its wings in 2021. Aviation Week was first to report on this development. In June of 2024, another photo emerged of a Super Hornet carrying an SM-6 over the Mojave Desert, which we were first to report on. Just a month after the sighting, SM-6's marked AIM-174B were seen being carried by Fleet Super Hornets at the Navy's massive Rim of the Pacific International War Games in Hawaii. There was no longer any doubt about this capability being more than just a classified test initiative. The Navy would subsequently confirm the existence of the AIM-174 and state that it is now operational with the fleet. The SM-6 Extended Range Active Missile, or ERAM, is an evolution of the Standard Missile 2, or SM-2. The Navy's Aegis-equipped surface combatant's primary surface-to-air family of missiles. SM-6 adds a greatly increased range, data link compatibility, and an active homing seeker, the latter of which would be later fitted to the latest versions of the shorter-ranged SM-2. The SM-6, which has been in service for over a decade, roughly doubles the reach of later variants of the SM-2, with an estimated range of roughly 200 miles. The SM-6 is considered a complementary missile to the SM-2, as opposed to a replacement for it. It's capable of swatting down incoming ballistic missiles in their terminal stages of flight as they careen down through the atmosphere at their targets, as well as taking out aircraft and cruise missiles. Its secondary ability to strike land and surface targets over long distances and at great speed, acting as a quasi-ballistic missile, gives it a far wider set of use cases than its SM-2 predecessor. This is why the type is being deployed on land by the U.S. Army, in the strike and anti-ship role. Finally, the SM-6 is currently the only missile capable of intercepting hypersonic weapons, although only under certain circumstances. But all this capability comes at a cost. The Navy's most flexible missile carries a price tag of a whopping $4,270,000 per round. The designation of the latest iteration of the SM-6 family of missiles tells an important story in itself. By giving it the AIM, or Air Intercept Missile designation, the Navy is signifying the AIM-174 will be used, at least primarily, for air-to-air engagements. This doesn't mean it can't be used in some of the secondary roles the SM-6 is capable of being employed in, such as attacking ships and ground targets at high speed over long distances. But the AIM designation does at least give us an idea of its main intended application. With this in mind, the AIM-174 becomes the longest-range air-to-air missile ever fielded by the seagoing service, by far. The SM-6 has a stated range of over 200 miles when launched against aerial targets from the surface, and it achieves this range with the help of a booster that isn't included in the aerial versions we've seen. This publicly discussed range figure is likely less than what it is actually capable of, as is often the case for security purposes. Still, any range figure is highly dependent on many factors, including the speed, direction, altitude, and maneuverability of the target, just to name a few. However, when launched from altitude by a fighter flying at high speed, its range could be extended quite dramatically, giving it the ability to hit some aerial targets over multiple hundreds of miles. The AIM-174B joins a very capable stable of air-to-air missiles in use by the Navy today, in addition to others already deep in development. In the near future, the Navy will have the following complementary weapons in its air-to-air combat arsenal. For close to intermediate range engagements, naval aircraft carry the latest version of the Sidewinder, the AIM-9X Block II, with future enhancements set to extend its range further. Then there is the AIM-120 AMRAAM, which has historically filled the medium beyond visual range requirement. With the introduction of the AIM-120D, The AMRAAM can hit out to longer ranges of around 100 miles, blending it into the long-range category once filled by F-14 Tomcat's AIM-174 Phoenix long-range air-to-air missile. The AIM-260 Joint Advanced Tactical Missile, or JTAM, is currently far along in development and remains deeply classified. We do know it will have a similar size and shape as the AIM-120, which will allow for internal carriage on platforms like the F-22, and we also know it'll offer significantly greater ranges than the AMRAAM. The U.S. military has said very clearly in the past that the development of the AIM-260 is directly related to concerns about the increase in range seen in newer Chinese air-to-air missiles, such as the PL-15 and very long-range PL-XX. Even an extra 50 miles would give JTAM a huge boost in capability over the AIM-120D. This, along with better terminal kinematics and inclusion of a multi-mode seeker, would make it even deadlier. As such, the AIM-260 would sit atop the AIM-120 as a true long-range air-to-air weapon with some significant overlap. Networking capabilities on all these weapons will also give them the ability to leverage third-party targeting, such as fuse data from airborne early warning and control aircraft, other fighters, sea-based radars, and more, and all the guileful tactics that come with that feature set. Then we have the AIM-174. This would truly be the big stick of the outer air battle, even extending far beyond the traditional realm of certain target types. Its range, by default, allows it to engage enemy aircraft outside the reach of what the aircraft firing it can see with its own sensors. This puts it in a different class than any of its companion weapons, although the AIM-260 could certainly creep into this realm as well. The ability for the AIM-174 to engage targets at these extreme ranges gives it many applications, but in a hypothetical fight with China, there are two glaringly relevant scenarios. China's anti-access capabilities pose a threat to carrier strike groups, unlike any we've ever seen before. It even arguably eclipses the Soviets' anti-ship missile threat of the later Cold War period. Beijing's ability to layer in many types of anti-ship weapons, including anti-ship ballistic missiles of various types, and especially those with very long range, is a uniquely vexing problem, and that problem will only get worse as hypersonic weapons and drone swarms continue to proliferate and grow in terms of sophistication. The AIM-174 allows the Navy to take the capability already provided by the SM-6 and push it much further out from the carrier strike group. Air launching an SM-6 allows for targets to be engaged at distances current sea-launched anti-air weapons can't come close to reaching. For instance, putting Super Hornets on station 250 miles from the carrier strike group with AIM-174s on board will provide a massive increase for engagement ranges and the amount of physical sky that can be put at risk and denied to enemy aircraft and missiles at any given time. Just the existence of this weapon alone can push some threats out beyond their useful range. While many have wondered if the AIM-174 is just a new AIM-54 Phoenix, and understandably so, the answer is unequivocally no. This weapon is exponentially more capable, versatile, and further reaching than an AIM-54 ever was. Above all else, it's meant to make use of future kill webs that leverages a massive network of sensors and shooters that doesn't just cover a localized fight, but could soon extend over large portions of an entire hemisphere. This, in particular, is maybe the biggest feature of the AIM-174. It's a weapon meant to leverage future kill webs that will see much more advanced data sharing over vastly greater distances, and will be able to exploit that information by pairing shooters and weapons to targets far faster than ever before. If the AIM-174 retains the SM-6's anti-ballistic missile capability, which there is no reason to think it doesn't, it could also extend the coverage of this terminal ballistic missile defense further than what a surface combatant can offer today, and do so on shorter notice. You can deploy aircraft armed with these missiles to an area under threat from ballistic missiles much faster than you can get an Aegis-armed ship there, as long as existing sensor networks can support targeting in that area. The air-launched SM-6 could theoretically be fired against incoming missiles using remotely generated targeting data. In other words, the Super Hornet would be the shooter, but it wouldn't track or target the incoming threat. The data would be networked to the missile via other sensory systems, potentially including those at sea, deployed on the ground and in the air, and in space. This could allow for Super Hornets to protect islands, ship convoys, and other assets from ballistic missile strikes. When paired with a destroyer operating in the same general region, Super Hornets carrying AIM-174s could expand the ship's terminal missile defense umbrella's protective area significantly. This is somewhat geographically limited in size compared to the Navy's mid-course intercept capability via the far more advanced and costly SM-3 missile. While SM-6 can take out some ballistic missile threats as they descend to their targets through the atmosphere, the SM-3 takes these weapons out much greater distances outside the Earth's atmosphere. But in many cases, providing terminal ballistic missile defense at extended distances with the help of Super Hornets would be a huge upgrade for U.S. Navy Aegis-equipped warships. Currently, the SM-6 is the only known U.S. missile interceptor that can counter hypersonic weapons. The AIM-174's potential ability to do the same would allow it to engage those weapons as needed wherever the kill weld will support it. This would be highly important for countering air-breathing anti-ship hypersonic cruise missiles, far from a carrier group or other high-value target area. When it comes to China's own kill chain, it relies in part on high-altitude, long-endurance surveillance aircraft like the WZ-7, Soaring Dragon reconnaissance drones, and long-range maritime patrol aircraft to detect and target enemy surface combatants. The AIM-174 puts those aircraft at risk of being taken out at the edges of their sensor capabilities before they have the chance to detect and track American warships. Without this initial targeting data, and mid-course targeting updates these platforms would provide, Chinese long-range anti-ship weapons will have to be employed with degraded targeting information, if they can be targeted at a U.S. or Allied ship at all. At the very least, less targeting capabilities will be available, with China having to rely more heavily on space-based submarine and over-the-horizon radar systems, which can also be vulnerable. The same can be said for attacking enemy cruise missile carriers, like China's H-6s, along the periphery of their maximum launch distance. This would be key to the fleet defense mission, as killing the Archer is always the preferable solution to engaging their arrows individually as they scream towards their targets. China's H-6s can be armed with a number of subsonic anti-ship missiles, as well as supersonic ones, such as the YJ-12. They can also fire air-launched anti-ship ballistic missiles, and being able to neutralize them at great distances is a massive and needed capability enhancement for the U.S. Navy. In many cases, the AIM-174B could allow these dangerous aircraft to be taken out before entering the long range of their weaponry, while also taking into account the FA-18EF's range limitations. So we're talking about potentially a massive leap in fleet defense here. And that's just when talking about the SM-6's air-launched derivatives air-to-air potential. However, the AIM-174 could also give the Navy an opportunity to directly target the most important and most protected assets that underpin China's anti-access and area denial strategy. During a U.S. military response to a Chinese intervention against Taiwan, in any similar expeditionary scenario, such as a conflict in the South China Sea, American fighters will be hard-pressed to get within the range of their current air-to-air missiles to successfully engage and destroy People's Liberation Army aircraft taking part in such an operation. This is especially true for key components, like force-multiplying aerial support platforms. These include airborne early warning and control aircraft, aerial refuelers, electronic warfare and surveillance aircraft, and maritime patrol planes. For the U.S., just getting aircraft to the vicinity of the main battle would be a huge undertaking, one plagued with risks. Such a sustained operation would require a large amount of constant tanker support, and those jets would be extremely vulnerable, operating so close to the core of the fighting. Most U.S. fighters have a combat radius of between 350 and 650 miles, so just accessing that fight, piercing China's anti-access bubble so that tactical air power can be brought to bear, is a massive hurdle, and one that the AIM-174 can help overcome. It isn't clear what the capability of the AIM-174 or the SM-6 in general is when it comes to engaging agile fighters over long distances, but shooting down the lumbering aircraft that enable those fighters is an entirely different story. The AIM-174B would likely best be used to leverage the emerging kill web to target very high-value, low-density enabling support aircraft over extreme distances. If the AIM-174B is successfully employed at long ranges to go after these critical assets, even as they operate behind the front lines, China's anti-access capabilities will begin to degrade. This would allow Allied tactical aircraft, as well as their own support assets, to venture closer to the fight. It will also put China's fighter aircraft and warships at greater risk of attack due to the loss of those key force-multiplying aerial support assets, especially ones that provide enhanced situational awareness to other force elements. In other words, the AIM-174B could work to stab the aerial eyes and ears out of the enemy's force, depleting its situational awareness and eroding its own kill chains, while opening up critical avenues of exploitations for Allied forces. The possibility of modifying the air-launched SM-6 with a dual-mode anti-radiation seeker could allow them to more independently prosecute, or at least suppress, airborne early warning aircraft far behind the front lines, without the need for precise targeting data prior to launch. These surveillance aircraft would be the absolute top targeting priority and they represent a capability set China is investing very heavily in. As China's anti-access bubble begins to degrade, low observable assets like F-35s, F-22s, B-21s, and collaborative combat drones could use their stealth and sensor capabilities to pass targeting info back to Super Hornets carrying AIM-174Bs, allowing them to patrol outside the enemy's engagement zone and lob the missiles on demand at targets way beyond what they can see with their onboard sensors alone. This mix of 4th and 5th generation fighters and other stealthy airborne assets, aided by a long-range air-to-air missile, is something we've talked about in detail for many years. But the fully networked, very long-range air-launched SM-6 would unlock such tactics, unlike any other weapon known in existence today. Once again, these are just two of the general scenarios where the AIM-174B could play absolutely crucial new roles and fill large gaps in the Navy's current roster of anti-air missiles. This analysis doesn't even go into leveraging the SM-6's anti-ship and land attack capabilities, which could literally be a game-changer for dissolving China's anti-access strategy. Just the existence of a weapon that will sit atop the future AIM-260 in the service's air-to-air missile arsenal is a key revelation, and more long-range air-to-air weapons are likely to emerge out of the classified realm in the coming years. There are still many questions, of course, about what applications the Navy will focus on for the AIM-174B early in its operational life. Although the limited number of these weapons and their very high cost will impact where and how the Navy chooses to employ them. While high cost and limited production capacity for the SM-6 is an issue, with the U.S. Army buying a variant for use as a ground-based surface-to-surface strike weapon, the existing surface-launched version used by the Navy, and now the AIM-174B, we are likely to see a major push to expand production of the SM-6 family even further, and with that could come a substantial drop in unit cost. There is also the question of the U.S. Air Force. This appears to be a near-perfect weapon for the F-15E and F-15EX, and even possibly B-52 and B-21. The U.S. Air Force wouldn't provide a comment to us on that possibility, but for all we know, such an initiative could already be underway. Finally, it'd be interesting to see if a simpler variant of this weapon could be produced without the active radar seeker. This version could be optimized just for striking sea and land targets, possibly with a less costly imaging infrared seeker, or no seeker at all, for use against static targets ashore. These modifications could lower costs, speed up production, and leave active radar variants available for more demanding targets. A version equipped with a dual-mode seeker head with millimeter wave radar and anti-radiation capabilities, like the one found on the AGM-88G AARGM-ER, would be extremely deadly against ground and sea-based air defenses, especially those that are on the move. A weapon like this one serves as a major role in breaking down an enemy's ground-based anti-access capabilities, so that other aerial assets, from stealth fighters to cruise missiles to drones, can penetrate to their target areas. Speculation aside, as it stands now, the Navy hasn't released any information about the AIM-174B, other than the fact that it's being used operationally, so it's difficult to say how it'll be used, at least initially. There's also a good chance air-launched versions of the SM-6 could be used for training and testing as surrogates for enemy anti-ship ballistic missiles. Still, with what we know about the SM-6, its capabilities, and how it's evolved over the years, it's more than apparent that the AIM-174B has the potential to be a key player in rolling back China's much-vaunted anti-access area denial bubble it's worked so hard to deploy.